Live from Lagos, this is Lunchtime Politics. I'm Jeffrey Uzoma. We'll bring you top stories that we're tracking in the polity and in politics. Let's begin with the headlines. Defense headquarters refute reports of a French military base in Nigeria. Describes story as fake and mischievous. Burkina Faso, Niger, and Mali set to exit the Economic Community of West African States in January. Regional bloc provides exit timeline with an open mind to possible change of events. Welcome again to the program. There's a lot to track in the polity, especially given what has happened at the weekend and the state of the polity as we wind down 2024. The special advisor to the president on public communications, Daniel Bwala, will be joining me in just a moment as we x-ray the state of the nation. But we'll begin the tracking of the polity with the Nigerian military refuting reports of the arrival of a contingent of French soldiers to set up a foreign military base in the northeastern part of the country. In a statement by the Director of Defense Media Operations, Major General Edward Buba, it describes the allegations as fake and mischievous and calls on members of the public to disregard the apparent rumor. He also restates the commitment of Nigeria's military towards protecting the territorial integrity of the nation and her citizens. And more stories now. The Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS, has announced that the membership of Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger will officially end on January 29, 2025. This is part of the resolutions reached at the end of the 66th ordinary session of ECOWAS Commission, Authority of Heads of State and Government in Abuja. Meanwhile, President Bwala Tinubu has urged ECOWAS leaders to emulate Ghana's democratic practice following a successful presidential and parliamentary elections in the country. Our correspondent, Emperor Simon, reports.
The 66th ordinary session of the ECOWAS Authority of Heads of State and Government begins with a group photograph of the leaders of member states led by its chair, President Bwala Tinubu, upon their arrival. Shortly after, they go into the hall for the meeting. All member states are present except, of course, the junta-led heads of government of Mali, Burkina Faso and Niger, who are conspicuously absent. In his statement, President of the ECOWAS Commission, Omar Torre, commends the leadership of President Tinubu in the bloc and for ensuring Nigeria keeps up to its financial obligation to ECOWAS.
Nigeria paid 85 billion naira and 54 million US dollars, representing 100% of the 2023 levy and the levy of 2024 up to July 2024.
President Nana Akufo-Addo is making his last appearance at the meeting as the 13th president of Ghana, following the recently held elections in Ghana, which produced a new president in the waiting. His party's gesture in conceding defeat to the opposition is commended by President Tinubu, who enjoins other member states to take a cue.
Your Excellency, President Nana Akufo-Addo of Ghana, thank you for being who you are. A sincerely committed Democrat who has been a shining example. I therefore invite all of us to give him a standing ovation and more applause.
President Tinubu then calls for more cooperation among ECOWAS members.
As leaders, we are fully aware that security is not a luxury, it is a necessity. Equally, enhancing the living standard of our people is not an aspiration, but an obligation.
After the speeches, Members of the media are excused as the meeting goes into a closed-door session for the consideration of the report by the ECOWAS mediation mission led by President Bassirou Diomaye Faye of Senegal and Faure Gnassingbé of Togo, among other reports. Hours later, the meeting opens with the president of the ECOWAS Commission presenting the communique, which highlights some of the major decisions taken regarding Mali, Burkina Faso and Niger's membership of ECOWAS.
Three countries will officially cease to be members of ECOWAS from 29 January 2025. The authority decides to set the period from 29 January 2025 to 29 July 2025 as a transitional period and to keep ECOWAS doors open to the three countries during the transition period.
The meeting comes to a close with the final remarks by the chair.
I call on all member states to redouble their efforts in ensuring that decision reached here translates into tangible benefits for our citizens.
For more clarifications, the president of the ECOWAS Commission briefs journalists afterwards on the status of Mali, Burkina Faso and Niger.
The 29th of January 2025 is the official date, but then the effective date of withdrawal is 29th of July 2025.
ECOWAS has allayed the fears of possible security threats should the three countries finally exit the community, as it assures of fostering cordial relationship with them, especially in the area of trans-border security, to ensure stability in the region. From the banquet hall of the State House, Emperor Simon, Channels Television News.
And on that one, that's where we're going to piggyback on the issue that has to do with ECOWAS. We're being joined in the program by Mr. Daniel Bwala. He's a special advisor to President Bola Tinubu on public policy communications. Mr. Daniel Bwala joins us from our Abuja studio. Mr. Bwala, good to see you. And I haven't had the time to say congratulations on air. So let me say congratulations to you first and foremost on your appointment.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Geoffrey. And good afternoon to the Nigerian people.
All right, let's get to this issue, this development with ECOWAS. It's sad to see what is going on with our regional bloc in terms of our brothers from Niger, Burkina Faso, and of course, Mali. So in your thinking, because we're now extrapolating as to what is going to be the future of the bloc without these three countries, but do you think that the incident of coup and what happened in those countries was mismanaged? And that is why we are here where we are, led by a president who is the chairman of the commission, of the community, because there's a man, I think called Alex Thurman, he talked about how coups are approached. But there's something called hard rejection, which they are telling the coupists, you cannot do this. You have to give power back to those who are constitutionally elected. Or soft rejection, where they say, no problem, we can allow you to stay, but you need a transition period. And then at some point, we're trying to put up a regional military force on ground to safeguard some of these happenings in the region. So generally, I'm asking, do you think the management of this coup is partly what is responsible for where we are now as ECOWAS?
The general concept of international diplomacy is actually a work in progress. There is no hard and fast rule, and there is no one rule that is straitjacketed. And that is why you find all over the world countries of the world that are considered as dominant, oftentimes in their interrelationship with countries that are less, sometimes at the beginning there will be a rough start, and at the end of the day, water will find its level. So I do not think it is the mismanagement. The decision of these three countries were clear right from the beginning. And of course, as democratic institutions coming together under a community called ECOWAS, you have to be able to, take a stand on whether you believe in the ideals of democracy and whether you can tolerate coup activities in Africa. We have a history which you know. And so ECOWAS has to stand, which is what it did, to say, look, we do not condone and we will not support the idea of military takeover in these countries. There are democratic ways of resolving problems no matter how bad they are. So the position of ECOWAS has to be what it did, which is to be firm in its decision. But the good thing about ECOWAS, which is also led by the leadership of President Tinubu, is to say that even though we have our principles and we have our red lines, but because we are brothers, we have shared view, shared prosperity, common interests, we are still giving you room to reconsider whatever decision you think you are taking, because at the end of the day, it is going to be for the benefit of us all, rather than thinking that by isolating yourself, you can exist or survive or succeed without the community.
It's a developing conversation. So when we have all the time, we're going to talk about issues of mobility, trade, security, their cascading impact of this development. But that's an aside. Let's talk about why I invited you. Let's talk about the economy. It's December. We're almost literally at the end of the year 2024. And by next year, the president is going to should have done his 2 years in office. And people are saying 2025 is almost like preparing for elections and all of that. But I want to show you something because he's going to be presenting the budget tomorrow to the joint session of the National Assembly. So this is a quick snapshot of the budget performance as against what the assumptions were when we came into this year. 3.76 was what the GDP growth was estimated at. You can see what it is now. Crude oil production, that was the estimation we wanted, but see what it is now. Exchange rate, crude oil price, which is not within our control, so we must excuse that. Inflation, look at the numbers. So if you look at this quick snapshot, do you think that the Bwala Tinubu government has done well in 2024 in managing the affairs of state as far as the economy is concerned?
Yeah, very, very well. In fact, our worst days are behind us. And sometimes when you speak, you have to speak contextually and also in perspective. When you juxtapose where we are today to when we started, where we were. And so if you look at the indices, which is reflected in the numbers in the last Bureau's report, for example, you rightly mentioned the GDP growth is by 3.46. You look at also the unemployment rate has decreased, which is a sign of progress. We look at the fuel imports declining, fuel export increasing even to Europe. Crude oil production, we are beginning to approach 2 million barrels per day. Revenue to debt service ratio, we maintain a certain number. We maintain up to 40 billion in the foreign reserve, yet we're clearing the forex backlog as well as paying our debt. If you look at the Lagos-Calabar road, you look at the Sokoto-Badagry, the student loan program, and many other aspects of the economy in which decisions through the various reforms of the government is piloting us. So the fundamentals of the economy are getting their structured position. And so our worst days are behind us. If you project on the basis of where we are now and probably the next 12 months, it can only get better. It cannot be worse than where we are today. So yes, we have made progress.
So you have said a lot of things all in one. So let's contextualize. There are clear gains of this government. We can talk about the resecuritization of ways and means. We can talk about the FX reserve. We can talk about debt service. We can talk about NEL fund and all of that. But there are other ones that are quite debatable, and there are clear failures, especially that has to do with the inflation. Inflation, we were expected to do 21% or something close to that. We're doing 33. The numbers, I guess, by now should have been out. But even with our interest rates being used to bring a bit of stability, you can see from the graph in front of you that inflation, which is like blood pressure in the human body, which is a vital sign, is still killing. And Nigerians are really hurting. So how would you say the government is doing well when the most fundamental vital is in the red?
So it's explainable and it's debatable, like you said, and understandable. Economics is a theory. There is no one road. It's just like the theory of law. It depends on what you're applying and also to a given circumstance. And all levels are not the same. So, for example, some of the excuse you can give for inflation, let me even start with food inflation, is that there are certain natural occurrences that are not within the control of the government, like the flood we had in the Northeast that affected Borno, Yobe, and Adamawa. It affected the food crops and production of agricultural produce in those states. These are not the things that were projected by economists. Nobody saw it coming. Then the insecurity in the Northwest, which we are now pushing them behind us. The way it increased at the beginning affected the farmers going to the market. These also were not the things that were projected at the beginning, but progress is being made. In fact, in the last 1 month or 2 months, we have less news around insecurity in those areas. So for every inflation that you see, the stubborn nature of the inflation by not submitting radically, it can be explained given the facts and the circumstances that I have explained. But if you take all of this behind and look at the market force and market activities, I can tell you that look at the inflation in the first quarter and the second quarter, you will see that we have actually gone. Go to the market now. Prices of items are going down a little more. But it is also understandable, Mr. Geoffrey, that there are human factors that are external, superficial influence in our economy. Once festive season approaches, there are these elements that have nothing to do with economic indices. It has more to do with the selfishness of the nature of human being, where people will hold items in order to hike it and then benefit during the festive season. The same thing that goes to transportation. So you cannot judge activities around a festive season to judge the economic movement of that country. But looking at where we are today and exactly last year around this time, Mr. Geoffrey, if you are going to agree with the numbers, we've made progress.
Well, the numbers don't suggest that we've made progress. The numbers are actually going up. I can throw for you the GDP numbers. I can throw for you the inflation numbers. So that's why I call them the vital numbers, because Mr. Bwala, just hold on. The situation we found ourselves is self-inflicted. That's the truth. But the president says it's a bold move and it's a necessary move. It appears that we did not put enough buffer to be able to cushion this, and now it's like we're on a tailspin that even the monetary authority is actually struggling to taper as it should be. We're on 33. That is astronomical.
Yeah, so what you are saying is the rhetoric of catchphrase. When people consistently use the term such as self-inflicted, we did not provide the buffer. So I want to put that question to you because we're having a conversation. What could you have done if you had to be in his shoes when you took over government and there is no money to be able to do the work? Are you going to concentrate on revenue and whatever you needed to do to generate the revenue and deal with the problem, or you are going to sit there and start singing by the rivers of Babylon? Now answer that question, then I'll go to the next numbers that you talked about.
No, I'm the one that asks questions here. So you are the one that will respond to all the questions. So respond to your question. I have more questions to ask you within the time.
Exactly. So I'm able to give you a pushback on that. Rhetoric is different from fact-based analysis. The second thing, you talk about numbers. You see, I just called out a number. We just talked about the GDP has gone up to 3.46. Is that not a number? Is it not higher than where it was in the last 2 quarters? We talked about unemployment rate. It has reduced to 4.3. Is that not a number? Is it not a marked improvement from unemployment a few days ago? Whenever the unemployment rate decreases, what it means is that people are getting jobs. What it means that economy is growing. What it means is that there is progress in the economy.
My apologies. That is debatable because a lot of people are taking up informal jobs. That model is even still debatable. I don't know what job you do in 1 week in Nigeria that will be able to sustain you. So that is even debatable.
But let me respond to that. Now, yes, but let me debate it. What is debatable means you talk, I talk now. It's not like two of us will be quiet. Now, whether you take up a job where you are paid in 1 day, what it means is that your purchasing power has increased. Are we agreeable on that?
No, we're not.
For 1 hour. That's
no,
why
purchasing power has actually...
That's why in the Western world...
Just hold on, Mr. Bwala. Okay. The purchasing power has dropped. I'll give you the numbers. I'll give you the... When the GDP came out, we could see what the numbers, the big drivers, were the telecom sector. We had the agricultural sector. Then we had the trade. But if you look beneath those numbers as they appreciate, you see that they were marginal year on year. For instance, agriculture grew by just 1%. The other trade was 0.something%. These were the big drivers and in double digits, meaning that if for those who understand economics, behind those numbers means purchasing power is low. That's why people are now buying as much as it because yes.
No, but you are contradicting yourself, Geoffrey.
No, I'm not.
When you say it grew, now I'm coming. When you say it grew by 1 point, what is the definition of growth?
It grew by 1.1%. If the biggest you're not getting it, Mr. Bwala. If the biggest driver of the economy, which is agriculture in terms of GDP, in 1 year only grew by 1 point, that is disturbing. Ask anybody who knows economics.
Okay, so yeah, that's a good point. You said it, but the thing is, you have to admit that it grew by 1 point whatever percent you mentioned. Now, if you admit to that fact that there was a growth, then it is now debatable whether, in your own estimation, the growth is slow or fast. This government is not in competition with anybody as to the speed of growth. Whatever it will take for us to put the fundamentals of the economy in good shape, there is no country of the world given the circumstances we found ourselves when the decisions were taken for those reforms, there is no country, you can go to America, where they have good institutions. If you take that kind of decision, there is no way your growth is going to be sporadic. It has to be a gradual growth. In fact, if your growth is very sporadic, then there is every reason to suspect that it is an artificial growth and not a natural growth based on economic indices responding to numbers. So what I'm saying, and I bear repeating and I maintain my position, is that our worst days are behind us. And in the last 2 quarters, there has been a growth, which it is intriguing, actually, that media people will say there is growth. And in the same breath, they will say that the growth is not sufficient. My point is that the fact that there is a growth means we've made progress. The next debate should be about the speed of the progress, right?
Mr. Bwala, so let me contextualize. When we say it's not sufficient, if you're looking at $1 trillion economy within the time frame this government has put out, and you're growing at that pace, then it's not sufficient by any standard. Yes, there is growth, but it's not sufficient. So nobody is wrong by saying that. We're saying that these are bold decisions, and the consequence of these bold decisions is what we're interrogating.
So after the COVID in the United States of America, Biden was confronted with the case of unemployment. It grew because during the COVID, people could not continue on their jobs. So even when they came up with COVID relief, where they paid employers in order to keep labor and not having to sack people, the growth in terms of employment was very slow for the entire period of 2021, I think, or 22, before in 2023, it began to pick up. United States of America, the biggest economy in the world. And look at the growth level. And then you're coming back to Nigeria, where the fundamentals of our economy were shattered, destroyed. The country was in a comatose, moving to decadence. And then you took policy decisions, and then we are now saying growth, and you said, although you agree there is growth, you disagree that the growth is not sufficient. So it's a matter of perspective. One half glass, half full and half empty is a matter of perspective.
You know, Mr. Bwala, what you're doing is interesting and dangerous. I'll tell you why I said so. It's interesting and dangerous because if you follow the Ghana election and you see the abysmal performance of the NPP, although Nana Akufo was celebrated, but the people of Ghana say he managed the economy terribly. And the rhetorics like this in defense of those policies, because if you sit Nana Akufo, he's going to tell you some beautiful things like you're telling me now, trying to defend all of these numbers. But the people were punished at the end of the day. So that's why there's a growing discontent as to the quality of life of the Nigerian citizen in terms of the cost of living, where people are saying there has to be something more drastic than some of the things. I've agreed that there are gains in some of these things that have been done. We've looked at the fact numbers and all of that.
Thank you.
But there is not enough to move the needle to the quality of lives of the average Nigerian. Do you agree to that?
Which explains the reason why the president consistently has been appealing to Nigerians and said, stay with me and be patient. We are certainly going to come out. The government is not in denial of the fact that Nigerian people are suffering. I mean, we don't need to overflog it. It has been our constant communication with Nigerians that the economy at the moment, as we're trying to put it in right place, is creating some inconveniences because you have to then adjust your life, adjust your way of life, adjust everything, and that this creates discomfort, but it's not going to last and we're going to come out of it. So we are clear about our message because we are also very realistic about the growth process. It is that there are some people who have some phantom image of what they thought should be the speed of progress of the economic recovery. That is exactly where the problems are. I would have loved, Mr. Geoffrey, I would have loved if you can quote an economist who is able to say A, B, and C, comparable to our economic reforms, we should have experienced speed to a certain level because this same reform was carried out in state B and there was a speed in that regard. You mentioned the issue of Ghana. All facts are not the same.
We have replete of example for the records. The abysmal inheritance, as you put it, is still from APC to APC. So let's be clear. So whatever you're saying, know that you're talking to the Bwala administration, which is the APC government. And these adjustments we're talking about, are we seeing enough from the government themselves in terms of fiscal discipline and fiscal prudence? Because the president has been criticized for buying jets. The building of the house of the vice president is a moral hazard. No matter how you try to gaslight us, somebody says an unintelligent, emotional expenditure. No matter how you want to look at it, if you say we should discipline ourselves, then we're not saying that from the presidency.
So this is again, rhetorics, I think, is the capital of media, lately. But let me tell you, we are moved by fact-based analysis. No matter the rhetoric, it flies faster because of the advent of new media. But fact-based analysis or fact-based debate and argument is what I will succumb to, no matter how repetitive the concept of the media is regarding the government program.
Mr. Bwala, I did not...
I'm coming. Okay. You allow people to answer now, Mr. Geoffrey.
No problem.
You're becoming like Shewuno. So now...
Shewu is a fantastic anchor, by the way.
I've never said he's not fantastic. I'm saying he interjects a lot. That's what I will say that to him. I've said it to him before. What I'm saying is, you talked about, you said whatever it is APC to APC. No, the fundamentals of this economy began to have the problem from before the democracy came in 1999. We have not managed gains. We have not managed progress. We have not strengthened institutions as they ought to. So from one administration handing to another, it is the same. I'm not here to debate politics of it is APCs versus APC. It's a fundamental problem that affected the economy irrespective of who led and which party led at that time. Point number one. Point number two, you talked about West. When the president issued a directive reducing the number of personnel, law enforcement personnel accompanying officials, reduce the number of people traveling with him on foreign trips, monetize certain services in government. Those things are not seen. What you are concerned about is the aircraft that is bought. So let me answer the issue of aircraft. Air Force One of the United States now, they are getting it ready. The one that was awarded, I think, to Boeing for a refurbishment to be ready for Donald Trump. The cost of that Air Force One is more than Nigerian budget for 2 years. So whenever you debate an issue, bring it on a case-by-case basis. The jet that the president has been using before now, presidents have been using over time, and he's been having problems, they are servicing it. He is the chief marketer of this government. If he is going to travel around the world within a short time and get investors in Nigeria, he will need to use a good jet. Nobody is talking about, did he order for Air Force One? The other day somebody said that you talk about ship in the sea, yacht. When has the president ever used a yacht? The yacht belongs to the Nigerian Navy. It is always very, very easy to mention key things, and they talk about the residence of the vice president. What is the problem about the residence of the vice president? It was awarded a long time ago, and for every time that it was not concluded, it was adding the value, and we needed to put it in place. Are you suggesting to me that these three items are the reason why the economy is where it is?
We're wrapping up. Unfortunately, it's not a long hour. We just have 30 minutes, and I'm totally out of time. As I said, no matter how much you try to gaslight us, it's a moral hazard this government will bear for spending that money. You're talking about America. America is way richer than us, so let's not even go there. And when I talk, when we bring facts, it's not nuances. But let's end on the note of...
But you'll be building on rhetorics. You are not supporting
No. I started with facts. I showed you a scorecard, and we built on that conversation.
You think that the gaslighting thing, it is a one-way traffic? The government also cannot be gaslighted by the rhetoric that the media is peddling, which is not substantiated by facts. I say call economists, do comparative analysis, then I will listen to you.
Well, we're talking numbers, and the numbers are in front of you. You don't need an economist. The numbers are clear.
And we reply you in numbers as well, Mr. Geoffrey.
I must thank you. I had a lot to discuss with you, but we have to do this again. When we needed to talk about the politics, but unfortunately, we don't have so much time. Mr. Daniel Bwala, special advisor to the president on policy communications.
Thank you for coming on the program. Gaslight me again.
Thank you. And we will now switch gears to the grand finale of the National Orientation Agency 7 for National Values Charter Campus Debate and Capacity Building taking place at Marriott Hotel in Ikeja. We're going live to that event center to bring you live coverage. Stay with us.